wind blows freely over the flatlands of Holland, unhampered by mountains or hills. For centuries, the Dutch have cleverly used the wind to rid themselves of the sky's over-lavish gifts of water. Of course, they first had to build a windmill and devise a good mechanism. But from then on, the work was done by the force of the wind, whereas in other countries, mills are most driven by water. Most of Holland's windmills are used to pump the excess water from the ditches and canals intersecting the land below sea level that was once the bottom of lakes. The post mill is a much older type, the oldest in Holland. It grinds corn. From of old, the farmers of the whole surrounding district have brought their corn here. Formerly, they were not even free in the choice of their mill. As free as the wind was only partially true. The miller had to purchase the right to use the wind from the lord of the manor, and in return, he was given a monopoly to grind corn. The miller is going to hoist the sacks, but for this job, too, he uses wind power. Many another kind of windmill is unlocked. For instance, there are still oil mills in Holland. In general, their work has long been taken over by industrial mills. But in the old windmill, the oil seeds are still crushed under the rolling runner stones. The seed has been ground to flour. This flour is heated on the stove. The flour is placed in the press in wool sacks. A wedge is driven into the block to press the oil out of the flour. After 50 strokes, a bell sounds automatically as a sign that pressing can be stopped. In this way, the miller makes oil and cakes for cattle. For hundreds of years, paper has also been made by wind power. The chopped rags are processed to paper pulp. The pulp flows out across a copper sieve. The water runs off through this sieve and the paper remains on it in a thin, homogeneous layer, which is lightly flattened by a wooden roller, so that the paper appears in wet sheets. These sheets need only be pressed. Then they're dried in long wooden sheds. At the beginning of this century, Holland still had 8,000 windmills. Now there are less than 1,000. As the number of windmills declines, so does the number of millers. And with them, their often very old customs are dying out gradually. When a miller is borne to his grave, the windmill mourns by a certain position of the sails. The cap turns so that the face of the windmill follows its master's funeral procession to the churchyard. The windmill has and speaks its own language, sometimes the voice of sorrow, sometimes the voice of joy. When one of the miller's children marries, the windmill is decorated in special fashion. The figures of the bride and bridegroom carry a burning heart in their hands. Symbolic figures occupy their fixed positions between the sails. Angels trumpet forth their praise for the bridal couple over the countryside. The festive decorations are crowned by the rising sun of happiness. Before the festival of the militia, a wooden bird soars into the sky on the point of the sail. The festival of the militiamen at the foot of the mill is an ancient tradition so much connected with the windmill. For instance, there is still a whole system of regulations and provisions with which the millers have to comply. At regular intervals, an inspector is sent out to check that all these regulations are really being complied with. If the inspector travels by train, a complete warning system comes into operation. We're approaching the first windmill, and now let's hope that the miller is watching. He's understood the signal. The miller passes the message on. The millers of a district have a common code. For each message, the sail is shortened in a certain way. In this way, a windmill language has come into being which may differ somewhat from place to place, but which is clear to the insider. And so the message passes from sail to sail. But the warning signals and the messenger service, the positions of the sails for birth and death, when a storm threatens, or an anniversary or a wedding is in the offing, all these are only secondary. The windmill only lives when it can work. There is no joy so great when its face is turned into the wind and the miller calls, "Unlock the mill."